All right, it is 12:04, and I want to be respectful of your guys' time. So we're going to get started. So first of all, welcome to our nutrition seminar with myself, Owen, and Kyle Gallant. Looking forward to getting it started. And first of all, I don't take for granted the fact that you guys would take some time out of your Saturday to show up and come to this nutrition seminar. So I'm grateful for you guys, and I'm thankful, and I'm looking forward to getting started and getting a little bit of education from my friend here. A couple quick household items here before we get started. First of all, your microphone and your camera should have been turned off. Once you enter the Zoom call, please just keep them turned off throughout the whole thing. And then if you have a question, just type it into the chat, and then I'll ask that question to Kyle. We'll have a good time for question and answers at the end of the Zoom chat. But if you have questions during it, go ahead and type that in as well. If you don't know who I am, my name is Owen Kurvitz. I am the owner and head coach at OK Fitness. We train out of Ancaster, Ontario. We work primarily with a lot of athletes at the varsity level and youth level, but we work quite a bit with general population as well. But who I'm more excited to introduce to you guys to is my friend Kyle Gallant. He's been a personal trainer in Dubai now for the past several years. He has his master's in clinical nutrition, so he knows what he's talking about. He's had a short but successful bodybuilding career, and he's also my childhood best friend, for those of you who don't know. So I was thinking about maybe going down some storytelling, but I guess if we were to say one quick story, there was his parents were both teachers, and so they would go away for the summer on big trips, and for some reason they thought that it was a good idea to let Kyle and Owen man the house for the summer. And so I don't know how that was a good idea to have two 16-year-old boys man the house for a summer, but you can imagine how that went. But in all cases, Kyle's someone that I've been looking up to for a lot of my life. His work ethic, his desire to constantly learn and grow have been two big motivating factors for me as well. So that is who Kyle Gallant is in short. Kyle, if there's anything else you want to say, go ahead, but the floor is yours, man.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks a lot.
All yours, man.
All right, cool. So we're gonna get started. So thanks, Owen, for the introductions. Just today, we're gonna go over some nutrition stuff. Hopefully, a lot of useful information for you guys. We're gonna do quite a bit of learning in the section, and then also quite a bit of applicable knowledge that you guys can use on your own to help reach whatever goals that you might have. Like Owen said, if we're going over a certain topic and you guys have a question that you want to answer directly on that topic, you can feel free to me. Otherwise, we will have at the end a question and answer section. So if you guys have any questions in regards to nutrition or even fitness, for that matter, we'll go over a question and answer section at the end of the seminar. So we'll get started now. We'll just flip to the first slide to show you guys what will be covered. So in this seminar, this is kind of the framework of what we're going to talk about. So first, we're going to talk about basic metabolic principles. So energy balance, metabolic processes, and caloric consumption. Then we're going to go into a bit about macronutrient consumption and the specific macronutrients and how they're important for your health and fitness. Then we'll talk a little bit about micronutrient consumption. We're not going to go too in depth into micronutrient consumption because that's a very, very heavy topic. And the point of this seminar is just to give you guys a brief understanding so you know what you're dealing with. Then we're going to talk about how to estimate individual caloric intake for specific goals. And I'll give you guys a few pointers how you can easily do that at home. Then we're going to talk about how to establish your macronutrient ratio. So once you have your caloric intake, or you figured out where your maintenance calories are at, meaning like you figured out how many calories you can eat where your weight's going to stay the same, we're going to talk about how you can then find your macronutrient to match your caloric intake. And then finally, we'll go into supplementation. I'm not going to go too in depth with supplementation because I don't really believe there's a whole lot of time for that as well. There's not a whole lot of supplements on the market that I really think are that necessary. So we'll go briefly into supplementation, and then we'll do the question and answer section. So like I said, we're going to start with basic metabolic principles. So the first thing I want to talk about is total daily energy expenditure. Now, this is how we burn calories throughout the day. So there's several factors that go into this. The first and biggest factor, which is roughly, and I say 65% on this chart, it's roughly around 60 to 70%, depending on the individual. But your basal metabolic rate is the rate at which the body uses energy while at rest to maintain vital functions, just such as breathing and keeping warm. So this would be the amount of calories that you are burning simply by just sitting on the couch doing nothing all day. And it's highly dependent upon your body composition. So if you're someone who holds on to a lot more muscle mass, your BMR is going to be much higher than someone who's holding on to a bit of excess fat. But again, there's other issues that go into your BMR, such as hormonal issues and enzyme issues, but we're not going to get too into that. The second effect that I have here is the thermic effect of food. So this is the energy required for digestion, absorption, and disposable of ingested nutrients. Its magnitude really depends on the composition of the food consumed. So what I mean by this is just the energy that your body expends digesting food. So certain foods like protein are going to have a higher thermic effect than a sugary carb, because it's a lot easier for our body to digest and use sugary carbs than it is to digest and use proteins. The third thing we're going to go into is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And this is basically the energy that you use in your everyday activity. So whether that be walking to work, climbing a flight of stairs, even typing on the keyboard, whatever it might be that you're doing with your body throughout that day, this is the calories that you're going to expend. And then the final one is exercise. So this would be what you actually do to train your body, whether that be weightlifting, jogging, swimming. There's a variety of things that people do, hiking, for example, to burn calories. But the reason why I put this last is because I want you guys to understand, if you look at this chart, it's very, you can tell the main thing that's going to drive our calories is going to be our BMR. And then we do have that thermic effect of food, but that's going to be roughly the same for everyone. So the last 20% of the calories that we burn in the day, and it's not 20% exactly, but around 20 to 30%, depending on how intense you exercise, is going to be our non-exercise activity as well as our exercise. And the reason why I'm stressing that this is low is it's very important that we understand that we can't necessarily out-exercise a bad diet, because exercise only contributes to so much of our calories burned throughout the day. Even if you're training super hard, 2 hours of weightlifting in the day, and you play a sport, and walk to work, you do all these things. If you're eating a lot of calorically dense food, it's going to be really hard for you guys to get the results you want, because our bodies will not burn through all those calories that we're consuming just through the exercise alone. So flip to the next slide, Owen. And this is where I want to talk about caloric intake. So caloric intake is basically the food that you're consuming. So it's made up of the food, the beverages, condiments, sauces, even alcohol. Everything that we're consuming that has some type of calorie intake or some type of fuel to be burned, our bodies will either use or store. So regardless of what your body composition goal may be, it's extremely beneficial to track your caloric intake. And by track, we'll get into that a little bit later, but by tracking, I mean being accountable for what you're consuming. There are numerous apps that you can use to track your daily caloric intake. So some of that I like are MyFitnessPal, My Diet Coach, and My Net Diary. And these are basically apps that you can go on. They make it user-friendly. You can put in whatever food that you might have in the cupboard. A lot of them have a scanning device on it. So if you have a barcode on your food, it makes it a little easier. You can just scan it, and there it is. And the reason why I like clients using these apps makes it a little bit easier for them to be accurate with what they're eating. Because one of the biggest pitfalls I see with a lot of clients initially is they don't quite understand just how much they're consuming, so quantity. Because if you take a handful of, for example, almonds, which are healthy food, and when you're eating them, you think, okay, I'm eating healthy. If you take a handful of almonds Well, a small handful of almonds and a large handful of almonds could be the difference in 200 calories. And if we add this up throughout all the food we eat in the day, this can make a big difference in whether we achieve our body composition goals or if we go a little bit overboard. So if you're trying to lose weight, it's important that we learn how to track our food properly. And it's not to say that you have to do this tracking throughout your entire lifetime, but I think it's helpful to do it for at least a month or two, just so that you get a groundwork of how much you're consuming quantity-wise. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to talk now about what factors take place and whether or not we lose weight or we gain weight. Owen, can you just click to the next slide there?
Yeah,
so now we're going to talk about energy balance. If you've been in the fitness realm, you've probably heard coaches talk about energy balance a heck of a lot. Now, energy balance is is basically calories in and calories out. So the majority of our bodily functions are dependent upon a state of equilibrium, and equilibrium basically means balance. For example, a healthy temperature requires the endocrine system, so your hormones, to create a balance of around 98.6 degrees Celsius. So whenever you take the thermometer, that's the temperature you're looking at to see whether or not you have a fever. Another example is the lungs and the skeletal tissue require an appropriate balance of oxygen to carbon dioxide, just so that, if we're exercising, that's why we're breathing heavily, because there's a whole bunch of carbon dioxide built up in the lungs as well as in the muscle, and we're trying to expend that carbon dioxide. So without this balance, the body begins to experience a shift and therefore reacts. And the reason I'm giving you guys these examples is because our metabolism really is no different. Every individual has a metabolic equilibrium or balance point, which means the amount of fuel that it is able to process in a given day. So if you look to the slide to the right, calories in would be our food and beverages, and obviously calories out would be our body functions and physical activity. So what does this mean in terms of body composition? Simply put, if we consume more calories than we are able to metabolize or burn, inevitably our bodies react by storing this excess fuel or food into our adipose tissue or our fat. So basically we add fat onto our bodies. If we consume less fuel than we metabolically require, our endocrine system or our hormones will work to find this fuel source from within the body. So if you're consuming less food in a given day than you're expending, then basically our bodies will look to find this fuel elsewhere. And often this results in metabolizing fat for fuel over the duration of a caloric deficit. So for the stretch of 3, 4, 5 weeks, if we're constantly eating in a caloric deficit, our body is going to take the fuel from our fat and burn that as opposed to the fuel that we would typically burn through our diet. So this is where we get weight loss. So energy balance is very, very important for body composition goals. If you're trying to lose weight, we need to consume less calories than we're burning so that our body starts to take those calories from the fat tissue, basically meaning we lose fat from our body. If your goal is to gain weight or to gain muscle, then inevitably we have to be in a caloric surplus, meaning we need to eat more calories than our body is burning every day. Because if we simply eat the same amount of calories that we burn, we're going to find that balance point where our weight won't change. We'll just stay basically the same on the scale. So we'll flip to the next slide. And this is where we're going to get into the makeup of our diet. So we'll start with the macronutrients. And I just want to give you a basic understanding on this slide of the caloric totals of each macronutrient. So this is calories per 1 gram. So if you look on the nutrition label, and it says 30 grams of carbs, well, as you can see, carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram. So 30 by 4 would mean 120 calories of carbs. So obviously for carbohydrates, we have 4 calories per gram. For protein, we have 4 calories per gram. And for fat, we have 9 calories per gram. But there are other caloric contributors. So fiber, for example, is 4 calories per gram, and alcohol is 7 calories per gram. The tricky one here is fiber, because when we look at nutrition labels, fiber often isn't included in in the caloric totals. So, for example, you might be eating, I don't know, a protein bar, for example, and it might say 200 calories. But then when you look on the label, it has 6 or 7 grams of fiber. Well, those 200 calories don't take into account those calories from fiber. That's not to say that fiber is bad for you. In most cases, actually, fiber is really good for you. But it's just something to think about. So we're going to go into the major macronutrients, and we're going to start with the one that I think for almost any body composition goals is most important, and that is protein. So we'll go to that slide. So your body uses protein to build and repair tissues. You also use protein to make enzymes, hormones, and other body chemicals. Protein is an important building block of bones, muscle, cartilage, skin, and blood. So whether your goal is to gain or lose weight, protein is generally the most important macronutrient. In a weight loss phase, adequate protein intake enables the maintenance of lean tissue as well as basal metabolic rate, so that 65% of our calories in the day. It also is a very satiating, or in other words, it fills you up, allowing you to not feel hungry throughout the day. During a muscle growth phase, in contrast, adequate protein intake is the main driver in muscle protein synthesis. So just a little thing on protein, if you are trying to lose weight, typically with clients, I like to put them around 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And then with clients who are trying to gain muscle, I give it a little bit higher of an intake, and that's about 1.25 grams per pound of body weight. Now, the reason why I want to just give it a little explanation. The reason why I say protein is the most important macronutrient is because whether your body composition goal, like I said, is to lose weight or to build muscle, we need adequate protein intake. And it actually is a little bit more important in the weight loss phase. So a lot of people who are losing weight, they're just thinking about, okay, I need to eat less calories than I'm consuming. But one of the main drivers to having a sustainable weight loss phase is having your protein intake at that necessary 1 gram per pound of body weight. The reason being is when you lose weight, yes, you lose fat, but you're also inevitably going to lose a little bit of lean muscle tissue. So what this does, if we remember from the basal metabolic rate, when I said people with higher amounts of lean muscle tissue often have a higher BMR, thus they burn more calories throughout the day. This is going to allow you to keep your BMR a little bit higher. So when we have that 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight in a weight loss phase, it's going to allow you to maintain as much lean tissue as you possibly can in that weight loss phase, which inevitably keeps your metabolism a little bit higher for a longer period of time. So for example, if we took someone who loses weight for 12 weeks, and we have 2 different people, we have one person who maybe eats 50 to 75% of the amount of protein they should, and we have one person who eats, the 1 gram per pound of body weight. This person, say they're both at 2,500 calories. By the end of 12 weeks, the person who's only eating about 50% of the protein intake that they should, their metabolism might go from 2,500 down to 1,750. Whereas the person who's eating the amount of protein they should in the weight loss phase, their metabolism might go from 2,500 down to 2,300. So when we look at the end of 12 weeks, we have the same people at the start, but now this guy can eat 2,300 calories before he gains any weight, and this guy can only eat 1,750. So that's going to make it a lot easier for the person on this side of the spectrum to maintain that weight loss and to go for another 4, 6, 7, so on amount of weeks. Whereas this person, the lower their metabolism gets, the harder it's going to be for them to lose weight because they can't eat as much food. So protein is very important in weight loss. And then in weight gain or muscle growth, it's also very important because obviously protein is what allows our body to build that lean muscle tissue. So we'll go to the next macronutrient, which is carbohydrates. Now, before I get into carbohydrates, this macronutrient often gets a lot of bad rep in the weight loss industry, but that's simply not really the truth. So the primary function of carbohydrates is to provide your body with energy. So your cells convert carbohydrates into fuel, a fuel molecule called ATP, through a process called cellular respiration. Like I was saying, contrary to popular belief, cutting carbs out of the diet is not necessary to lose body fat. The reason being is carbohydrates are stored in the liver, and skeletal muscle as glucose is a backup source of fuel for the glucose that circulates in our bloodstream. So glucose is basically carbohydrates broken down into this compound called glucose that our body can use. And only in a caloric surplus do carbohydrates get converted into fat. So if you're losing weight and you're in a caloric deficit, you don't need to worry about carbohydrates putting fat onto your body, because inevitably there's going to be carbohydrates within our system anyways, and they're only going to convert into fat if we're in that surplus. So if we're in a deficit, we don't need to worry about it, and that just basically means we don't need to entirely cut carbs out of our diet to lose weight. Oftentimes, actually, people do much better when we put a bit more carbs into their diet and take away from certain things like fat on a weight loss phase. I do want to note, though, however, due to the physiological necessity for specific quantities of protein and fat, carbohydrates usually are, in most people, the easiest macronutrient to lower when we're trying to lose weight. It's not to say that it's necessary to lower them. Just for a lot of people, it's easy to cut a little bit of carbs out of the diet, just because they're often the most abundant macronutrient already in the diet. So we'll go into the last macronutrient, which is fats. Another macronutrient that sometimes people give a bad rep to when they're trying to lose weight. So dietary fats are essential to give your body energy and to support cell growth. They also help to protect your organs and help keep your body warm. Fat helps your body absorb some nutrients, specifically fat-soluble vitamins, and produce important hormones. So I have a couple examples here of healthy and unhealthy fats. So healthy fats are what's called monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. And as you can see in the picture, the majority of, well, actually all those in the picture are considered healthy fats. So things like nuts, avocado, fatty fish, and so on. Speaking of fatty fish, specific food high in what's called EPA and DHA, which are omega-3 fatty acids, are scientifically proven to reduce inflammation and reduce your risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease. On its own, DHA even supports brain function and eye health. So cutting fats entirely out of your diet wouldn't be advisable if you're trying to lose weight, because we do need specific amounts of fat and certain types of fats in our diet for health factors. However, certain fats we can completely eliminate from our diet, and this should be done whether we're trying to gain muscle or gain weight, or we're trying to lose weight. And these unhealthy fats are saturated fat, trans fat, as well as other types of saturated fats. We won't get into those too much. These in the diet are intricately linked with high risk of CVD, as well as the buildup of other things like plaque and blood pressure related to the heart. So these would be mainly like your deep fried foods, a lot of things in your fast foods, processed foods that you can get from the supermarket, often are all high in these saturated or these trans fats. So the average minimal amount of fat necessary to maintain optimal health is around 45 grams per day, depending on the person. So even if you're trying to lose a ton of weight, we do want to maintain a minimal barrier of fat intake. With the majority of diets, I would recommend starting with about half a gram of fat per pound of body weight. So if I was to start with a client who's 160 pounds, I would start them around 80 grams of fat in their intake. So we'll go to the next slide, and we'll get out of macronutrients, and we'll briefly talk a bit about micronutrients. We're not going to go, like I said, too in-depth into micronutrients, because there's a lot that can be talked about, but we're going to give you guys a basic understanding. So micronutrients are one of the major groups of nutrients your body needs. They include both vitamins and minerals. Vitamins are necessary for energy, energy production, immune function, blood clotting, and other functions. Meanwhile, minerals play an important role in growth, bone health, fluid balance, and several other processes. Chronic deficiencies of specific micronutrients within the diet can cause various health complications, which is why annual medical checkups are deemed vital for long-term health. So yeah, guys, like I said, I'm not going to get too much in depth into specific vitamins or minerals and the deficiencies or the overconsumption that you can have in a diet. But what I would say is this is why it's very important that annually we go get a checkup with our doctor and we get all these health biomarkers checked, because there are a plethora of conditions that can arise if we're deficient in certain vitamins or we're deficient in certain minerals. So having that checkup is critical to maintaining optimal health. Now, micronutrients aren't going to do a whole lot for your body composition goals, but as we can see, they're going to do a lot for the health of our body. So diets rich in fruits, vegetables, legumes, as well as lean meat and fatty fish sources provide adequate micronutrients for a healthy physiological diet. If you have a good balance of the foods that I just stated, in most cases, it's not really necessary to have a vitamin or mineral supplement. However, if you struggle to get, a good intake of vegetables and fruits in your diet for whatever reason, then in that case, it might be helpful to supplement with a multivitamin and a mineral complex. So we'll go on the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about the specific vitamins and minerals that are more important. The reason I touch these vitamins and minerals is mainly because deficiencies in these specific vitamins and minerals can cause a plethora of serious issues, which is why it's, like I said, important to check with your doctor. So vitamin A is very important for our immune health. It helps allow our body to fight off infections, as well as with our eyesight. Vitamin D is also very important in the absorption of calcium in the body, which is what we need for our bone health. So if we're getting older, running the risk of things like osteoporosis could be where vitamin D supplementation might help. Vitamin E helps maintain cell structure by protecting the cell membranes. Vitamin K helps with our cardiovascular system because it helps with blood clotting. So people who have high blood pressure or who possibly have, been in a higher body intake help with blood clots. Groups, the energy when they go traveling to different countries, or when it's flu season, they have a vitamin C supplement with them, and that's mainly because vitamin C plays a vital role in helping our immune system stay active. Folic acid. Now this one is more specifically for the women out there, because food is now fortified with folic acid. However, women out there, especially those who are thinking about having a kid, folic supplementation is very important because it helps protect your child against neural tube defects. And then iron as well, especially with women as well. Often a lot of women suffer from acute anemia, or if they're anemic for a long time, it'd be chronic anemia. So iron basically helps our blood cells with the storage and carrying of oxygen. So it prevents anemia. And then the final one, important mineral that I want to talk about is calcium, which helps, as most of you probably know by now, it helps build strong bones and teeth. But it also helps with our nervous system, helps our nervous system function properly, and our cardiovascular system avoid blood clots, just like vitamin K. So I don't expect you guys to remember all this. You guys, I believe Owen said you guys will have access to this presentation after. So if you guys ever want to look up any of this stuff, we'll have it here on the presentation, and you can simply look at it. As you see on the right, if you do think you're deficient in certain vitamins or minerals, there are several food sources given on the right that can help you increase that intake. But don't try to self-diagnose. That's the most important things I would say. People sometimes go on the internet and they Google, I'm feeling tired, or I have this symptom or this symptom, and they try to self-diagnose, and then they say, oh, I'm deficient in vitamin D, so I'm going to go buy a vitamin D supplement and take a vitamin D yesterday, and that'll help. It's very, very important. I can't stress this enough. Don't self-diagnose. Go see your doctor. Get the biomarkers checked. and then they can advise you whether or not you need a supplement. Because there is such thing as too much.
Oh, looks like we may have just lost Kyle. See if we can get him back. One sec.
Sorry about that. My phone came off for a second there.
You're back. We're good.
Back. So what I was saying was, don't self-diagnose, because there is such thing as too much of a specific vitamin or a mineral. So what we call this is the safe upper intake level. And basically what that means is if you have too much of a certain vitamin or mineral, it can actually be toxic. And with specific vitamins and specific minerals, having too much can lead to specific chronic conditions or diseases. So very, very important. Don't self-diagnose. Get your biomarkers checked by your doctor. And then if they say that you should supplement, then you can supplement with one of these. But don't just go to GNC and listen to some guy tell you, oh, take this vitamin because it's going to help you do so and so. Not what I would advise. But we won't get into that too much anymore. We'll go next into how you can figure out your caloric intake. So now we know about macronutrients. We know about micronutrients. We know about total daily energy expenditure and caloric consumption. So now we need to put this together. So how do we find our maintenance calories, or the amount of calories that we can eat where we're going to basically stay the same weight? If we eat more than this amount of calories, we gain weight. If we eat less, we lose weight. So the most efficient metabolic tests use what's called indirect calorimetry, and this is performed in the laboratory. Unfortunately, unless you have access to some university laboratory, this can be quite expensive. So there are easier ways to do this on your own. And the easiest way to get a rough estimate of your body's metabolic demands is to use specific health apps. So these apps will take your height, weight, age, gender, and activity levels to generate a caloric intake for you using a couple of methods or formulas. Unfortunately, this is simply a rough estimate, as everyone's metabolism reacts differently based on hormone levels, lean body mass, genetics, and your physical activity level. So it's not going to be precise, it's not going to be exact, but it will give you a roundabout number of where you're at. Once you have this specific daily calorie goal, the most efficient way to establish a true metabolism is by weekly tracking. So this is using those food tracking apps, like I said, to kind of figure out week by week how your body is adjusting to the amount of calories that you're consuming. So if we go on to the next slide, I give you a simple and efficient way to do it on your own. This would be if, like, obviously you don't have a coach or you don't have someone helping you along the way. And like I said, these slides will be up there, so you guys don't have to memorize this. If you want to go look back on it later, you can. So how to do it at home. Step one, weigh yourself as soon as you wake up. So for example, if you know you can wake up at the same time on a Monday, then let's weigh ourselves on Monday morning as soon as we wake up. Typically I tell clients, do this after you use the washroom. So, you know, if you have to pee or whatever, do that, and then step on the scale, see your weight, write it down, write down the day. And then step two, what I would say is download one of the free apps that I've been talking about. So MyFitnessPal, MyNetDiary, any app that's going to help you track your food intake. Step three, log your food exactly for a week. Try to get everything in there. So don't just put your food in there, but put in the quantities of your food, put in the condiments that you use, put in the drinks that you've had if they're not water, I mean if they have calories within them, and track this for a week. Yes, it's a pain in the butt at first because you're not used to doing it, but it's going to be very important for you to figure out where your metabolism is at. So so efficiency is key with that. So make sure that you log everything. Step four, weigh yourself at the same time on the same day a week later. So if you weighed yourself Monday morning when you woke up, weigh yourself the next week Monday morning when you wake up. Step five, take your daily calorie totals for the 7 days, add them up, and then divide by the 7 days to find the average daily intake. So what I mean by this is take Monday, you ate 2,300 calories, Tuesday you ate 2,500 calories, and so on. Take those 7 days of calories, add them up, and divide by 7, so you get an average calories that you ate throughout the week. And then step 6, I don't know why I said step 7, but it means to be step 6. Judge whether or not you should eat more or less calories based on how your weight fluctuated during that week. So if your weight stayed the same, you're eating roughly around your maintenance intake. If your goal is weight loss, try starting what I would say a healthy amount would be about 300 calories below your maintenance. Also try to increase your daily caloric burn by being a bit more active. And you can do this simply by, instead of taking the elevator up to work, take the stairs, just simple things that you can do throughout the day to burn a few more calories. To basically get that total daily energy expenditure a little bit higher. Just a quick couple notes. A healthy weight loss is about 1 to 2 pounds per week. So about 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week would be a healthy weight loss. If you're someone who is considerably heavier, and you have a lot more weight to lose, you can push this barrier, at least at first, a little bit higher to maybe 2 to 3 pounds a week. And then what I want you guys to understand is how to understand how much calories I should take out of the diet if I'm at maintenance or if I'm below maintenance or whatever, based on that 7-day average that you had throughout the week and the weight that you weighed in. So 1 pound of weight gained or lost over a week is roughly 3,500 calories. So if you gained a pound over the week, that means you ate 3,500 calories over your maintenance, which is about 500 calories per day. So basically, you can use this knowledge to say, okay, I gained 1 pound this week eating 2,000 calories. That means, I gained 1 pound this week eating 2,500 calories. That means I need to get down to 2,000 calories if I want to be at maintenance, because 1 pound of weight gained is 500 calories per day. So if you ate 2,500 calories, you gain a pound a week, take away 500, 2,000 is your maintenance, and vice versa. If you want to gain weight and you weigh yourself on a Monday morning and then you weigh yourself the next week and you maintain the same weight, say you ate, again, let's use 2,000 calories. You ate 2,000 calories average throughout the week, you stayed the same weight, but your goal is to gain weight. Add an extra 500 calories and you'll gain about a pound per week, right? So maybe instead of 2,000 calories, you'd want to eat 2,500 calories. But it's pretty cut and dry. People like to make it a little bit more complex than it should be, but it all does depend on basically that energy balance. So calories in versus calories out. If you're consuming more calories than you're burning in the day, you're going to gain weight, simply put. If you're consuming less calories than you burn in the day, you're going to lose weight. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. There's no detox juices or pills that you can go take that's going to change that energy balance. So it's really dependent on your nutrition, whether or not you're going to reach that body composition goal. You can train hard. You can go to the gym and do whatever style of training you want to do, and that's going to help you burn more calories. But simply put, the energy balance is king. So if we're just training super hard and we're not paying any attention to our nutrition, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to reach those body composition goals that we want to reach. So the reason I put this slide in there is so that you guys can go back after this if you want, and you can try this method out yourself. It's going to be a bit of trial and error. I wouldn't expect, obviously, in the first week that you're going to lose weight or gain weight or get it spot on, but that's kind of the point. It's trial and error. There's no app or formula that you're going to find online that's going to give you specifically your caloric intake unless we use one of those laboratory methods that I showed on the last slide. So use this method, do trial and error, do 1 week, see how your weight fluctuates through that week, then adjust the calories for the next week, try and stick to it for that week, see how your weight fluctuates based on the calories that you've changed it to, and so on and so forth. And over the matter of 2 to 3 weeks, you should have a really good idea of your maintenance calories, and you should have a really good idea of how many calories you should be eating to achieve your own specific body composition goals. So let's go to the next slide. And this is where we're going to talk a bit about macronutrient breakdown. So let's just say now we have our maintenance calories. We've done 2 or 3 weeks of trial and error with the steps that I provided you, and now we want to figure out how much protein, fat, and carbs I should have specifically with these calories. So I have 2 case studies here, and basically I wanted to make it as simple as possible. So I used a male of the same weight in each case study with the same maintenance calories. The only difference is how often they train per week. Okay, so as you can see, the guy on the top trains 5 to 6 times per week. The guy on the bottom trains 2 to 3 times a week. So this specifically changes a little bit of our macronutrient breakdown. So with the guy that trains 5 to 6 times per week, I have protein at 206 grams. The reason I do that is because someone who trains that often and is that physically active, we want to push a little bit more on the higher side with the protein intake. So here we would put someone that trains that often with about 1.25 grams per pound. So if he's, like I said, 165 pounds, 1.25 would be 206 grams of protein. For fat, I have him at about 58 grams, which is about 35% of his body weight. And for carbs, I'd have him about 289 grams, which is basically filling the remainder of calories. So the first couple things that I figure out are protein and fat, and carbs fill the rest, right? So we have them at 289 because those 289 calories from carbs will fill out that 2,500 maintenance calories. And in the study below, we see a bit of a difference mainly in the protein, right? So this guy only trains 2 to 3 times per week as opposed to the guy above who trains 5 to 6 times per week. So with this guy, I keep his protein actually a little bit lower because there's not as much need for a high protein intake for what's called protein synthesis. So for this guy, we have him at about 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is 165 grams of protein. And this allows us to give him a little bit more of fat within his diet. So now we raise the fat to about 50% of his body weight, which is 82 grams, and the carbs are 276 grams. The carbs, again, are just filling in the remainder of that 2,500 calories. You don't have to remember these specific ratios, but it is good for you to kind of get a simple understanding. If you're training much more throughout the week and you're breaking down muscle tissue at a higher rate, you're going to want to go more towards 1.25 grams of protein per pound, as opposed to if you're training less, you want to go to 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now with the fats and carbs, it's not specific. It's different for everyone. So for example, myself, I do a lot better with higher carbs in my diet, whether I'm trying to lose weight or gain weight, than another person. For one of my clients, for example, she does really well when I put more fats into her diet. So really that part will be a little bit trial and error, but the protein is pretty standard across the board. With fat, I would say you don't really ever have to go above 50% of your body weight. So if you're 160 pounds, you don't really ever have to go above 80 grams of fat. But underneath that, it's all trial and error. And like I said in one of the previous slides, try not to dip too far below 40 grams of fat in your diet. And then carbs is really personal preference. You can certainly lose weight with a ton of carbs in your diet and with less fat, but it's totally up to you. For me, when I have someone who trains more often, so the guy above who trains 5 to 6 times per week, you can see that's kind of why I have his carbs a little bit higher. Because as we know from the previous slides, carbohydrates are our main source of fuel. So if you're more physically active throughout the week and you train, 5, 6, 7 days a week, it's going to help your body a lot to have a bit more carbs within that diet. Whereas if you're someone who's training 2 to 3 times per week, you don't necessarily need that much carbs in your diet. However, like I said, it's totally a personal topic. That's just how I would do it with a client. I would give someone who trains more frequently a bit more carbs in their diet as well as more protein, whereas someone who trains less frequently, I'd give them a bit less protein in their diet, a bit less carbs, and I'd bring their fats up a little bit. So the last thing we'll talk about will be supplementation. Now, I don't want to get too much into supplements because I think if you have a well-rounded diet, you don't necessarily need the majority of supplements on the market. And there's a lot of what's called pseudoscience in the industry. And what pseudoscience is it's taking real science and kind of twisting it a bit around so that we can sell a product. And I'll give you a specific example. So if you've ever been to a GNC, or if you've been in training for a little while, you might have heard of the supplement L-carnitine. L-carnitine is labeled as a fat burner, okay? And the reason why it's sold and the reason why it's labeled that way is there is a compound in our body naturally called L-carnitine, which helps us oxidize fat. So basically what that means is it helps us take fat and convert it to glucose or carbs and use that fat as fuel. And our body naturally does this. However, when we take it orally or when we take it externally through a supplement, that L-carnitine will get burned in the stomach acid before it ever comes into effect. So what supplement companies do is they take real science, because L-carnitine really in your body burns fat, and they say this supplement will help you burn fat. It's scientifically proven to help you burn fat, so you should take it for that reason. However, like I said, this is pseudoscience, because when you take it externally, it's not going to have the same effect as the internal L-carnitine. So I just want to give that brief preface on supplements. Be careful when it comes to supplements, because a lot of things are marketed using science, but in the applicable real world, they don't necessarily work. So the supplements that I have listed on this page are all supplements that I would advise people to take. You don't necessarily need to take all of them. It's just supplements that I would say have proven scientific results and can help you, whether that be performance as a nutritional aid or through health. So for performance, we have creatine, and creatine basically helps us in a weight training setting. The explosive energy system in our body is called ATP creatine. So basically quick bursts, so doing stuff like sprints, doing stuff like box jumps, doing stuff like heavy squats or heavy deadlifts. We're using creatine with our body, and it's been proven that if we take about 5 grams of creatine per day, it can help with performance. Now, if you're not an explosive athlete, you don't necessarily need to take creatine. So you can check that off your list. If you're just someone who does more functional training, nothing really heavyweight, nothing really high intensity, you don't necessarily need creatine. And another one is caffeine. Again, this is changes from individual to individual. It's not necessary for performance, but scientifically proven caffeine can help you perform a little bit better in the gym, perform a little bit better in your functional workouts. It just gives you a bit of a boost. There's been studies done with people doing, for example, like 1 rep max deadlifts, where specific amounts of caffeine intake improves their overall performance in the gym over a certain period of time. What I would say is be careful with caffeine as well, because obviously you can take too much. So if you're someone who's very sensitive to caffeine and you have no problem working out without it, then I would definitely always advise you to just stick to what you're doing. You don't need to use caffeine. Or if you're really tired in a day and you want that extra pick-me-up, maybe have a cup of coffee. There are other things out there like pre-workouts. You can take pre-workouts, but just be careful. If you're older, or if you have a family history of health conditions, obviously taking excess caffeine as well as the other stimulants that are within pre-workouts can have a risky effect on blood pressure, risky effect on heart rate. So just be a little bit careful, know your health history before you start taking something like pre-workout. Nutritional aid, I have protein powder, and the reason that's a nutritional aid is mainly because I don't advise protein to people as this thing that's going to help you build muscle. What protein powder is just to supplement your diet. So if you struggle to cook enough food throughout the day and you need to get your protein intake, then having a quick shake is not going to do any harm to you. Or if you're someone who maybe is on the run and you only have fast food options around you, having a quick protein shake or something like that, or a protein bar, can certainly be helpful, and it can be a healthy snack. Obviously, be careful if you have some intolerances. For example, if you're lactose intolerant, then a whey protein is not going to make you feel very good, and that's where you might want to go more towards like the vegan protein sources. And then below that, I have a greens powder. So you might see these in a lot of supplement stores. You might see these in a lot of markets. these are actually, I would consider, a decent nutritional aid, especially, like I said, with protein powder. If you have trouble cooking a lot and you have trouble getting your vegetable and fruit intake, then these green powders can help you achieve those micronutrient goals that you might want to establish. And then below that, we have health. So there's a couple items I have here. Fish oil, number one. I don't think fish oil is going to be harmful for anyone to take. It's very, very, very good for cardiovascular health. So it's good with triglyceride levels, good with controlling plaque. It's good with helping with blood pressure. So basically anything dealing with heart health, fish oil will help with. That's mainly because of the DHA and EPA that are within fatty fish, so the omega-3 fatty acids. I would say this though, if you consume 2 to 3 sources of fatty fish a week, so salmon or mackerel, or even sometimes tuna can have a good amount in it, then you don't necessarily need to take a fish oil. But if you don't eat a whole lot of fish in your diet, then a fish oil will definitely help with cardiovascular health. And then the final one I have there is specific vitamins or minerals. We talked about this in the micronutrient section. Don't start taking a multivitamin or mineral complex or specific vitamins or minerals unless your doctor has told you to. Oftentimes, if you're eating a well-balanced diet, you don't need to. And basically, you're spending a whole lot of money to turn your urine a weird color. So it's not always all that necessary. But that's why it's important that we do have those annual checkups, like I said, with your doctor, just so that we can see if maybe adding in a specific vitamin or a specific mineral would help our health along the road. And then there's other supplements out there that have a bit of clinical proof to them, but not enough that I would say I would recommend you spending a whole lot of money on. For example, like branched chain amino acids are a very popular supplement, BCAAs. But if you have a diet sufficient in protein, it's not really going to do anything for you. Like Owen told you at the start, I do bodybuilding competitions naturally. And in the bodybuilding world, everyone's taking a BCAA because it's advertised as this amazing supplement that helps you build muscle during your workout. But simply put, if you're eating adequate amounts of protein, you already have the necessary amino acids within your diet. So basically, at that point, it becomes a really expensive Kool-Aid, right? It tastes good. Maybe you like to have it. Maybe it's something that you want to have, but it's not necessary if you have a well-balanced diet. So that's the nutrition seminar in a gist. I know we covered a lot of topics and I talked a lot, but now is the point where we kind of want to do the question and answer section. So for people out there who have specific questions that they want to ask and have answered, you're more than welcome to type them in or speak them, and Owen will send them over to me and then I'll answer it on here.
Awesome, Kyle. That was really good, man. Thanks for that. I'm like trying to write down mental notes as you're doing this because there's, like you said, there's a lot of content there, so that's really good. Maybe just, as Kyle said, guys, write your questions in the chat and then I'll ask them. But if I was to get that conversation started, we'll let Kyle return here.
Yeah, sorry, for some reason the air conditioning turned off and it's super hot here in Dubai.
No,
so I said turn it on.
I know for me, after these seminars, especially with the ones that there's a lot of content, it's like, okay, where do we go from here? So if you were to give maybe one piece of practical advice to someone who's just trying to have a better nutritional lifestyle, feel a bit better, walk away from this webinar, what would be kind of your first step or two towards doing that?
I mean, the first thing I think that's important, because I mean, most people who want to start thinking about their nutrition are doing it for a body composition reason. So whether they want to lose weight or gain weight, put on muscle. So I think the first main important thing for most people would be to try and figure out what their maintenance calories are. So on one of the slides, I gave you guys, a way that you can do that. But I would say this would be the first thing that I would kind of focus on if you're new to nutrition and you want to achieve a certain body composition goals. Because at the end of the day, energy balance is king, right? How many calories we're consuming versus how many calories we're burning, that's going to be the ultimate factor in whether or not we lose or gain weight. So if I was to give one piece of advice, it would be to start trying to track your food and figure out where your maintenance calories are at, just so you have a starting point to understand how you can lose weight. Because if you don't know where your maintenance calories are at and you're trying to lose weight, it's kind of like, running with a blindfold on, right? You might get to your destination, but there's a big chance that you won't, right? You don't know how to get there because you can't see where you're going, right? So the first piece of advice would always be figure out your maintenance calories and start learning to try and track your food efficiently.
Awesome, man. Awesome. That's really good. There's not too many questions coming in, so apparently you did a really good job explaining everything. Good on you for that. If I was to ask, I'll ask you one more question because I know there's several athletes that are on here right now. What would you say?
Guys, if you have any, sorry, Owen,
Yeah,
if you have any questions, don't think any question is a dumb question. That's what we're here for. That's why we're providing this to you guys, because we wanna give you guys all the ability to have your questions answered, and we want to help you guys as much as we can, especially during this time where a lot of us are staying at home and we have a lot more time to cook food and to plan our meals and do stuff like that. This is where nutrition becomes even more important, because we can't necessarily out exercise a bad diet if we're stuck at home, right? So this is where you guys can come a long way with understanding your own personal nutrition guidelines and goals. So don't think anything is a dumb question, because if there's something that you want answered, then it's an important question, right? Because it's important to you. So we're here to help you guys. So don't feel shy to ask a question. Anyways, go ahead, Owen.
Yeah, no, that's really good, man. And that was the best time ever to work on nutrition. If you have a little bit of extra time, you got some extra time at home, why not work on your cooking skills, right? Exactly. We got one question from Tash here. So he says, to increase lean tissue and build muscle, how do you increase calories without gaining weight?
So the only time, here's what I'm gonna say. The only time that you can gain muscle while not gaining weight is if you're new to the gym. Okay, so when you just started training in the gym, and you've never weight trained before, then that stimulus is going to allow us to build some lean muscle, right? Even if we're in a caloric deficit. That's why sometimes you see people who have, I've had clients who are 300 pounds, right? And we get them down to 250, but they're stronger and they feel like they have more muscle on their body. Why is that? Because they've never weight trained before. So that stimulus is going to allow those muscles to build a little bit. However, if you're someone that's trained more, so say you've trained for a couple of years now, I'm sorry to tell you, you can't put on muscle without gaining a bit of weight. So if you've trained for a little while, then that just makes nutrition all the more important, right? Because obviously we don't want to put on a whole bunch of fat. Like you see a lot of guys like, oh, I'm bulking, man. Like I can eat whatever I want. I'm trying to gain muscle. I'm bulking. And they just end up being, at the end of their bulking season, they'd be 30 to 40 pounds heavier with a whole bunch of fat on their body. And then they got to do a whole bunch of recovery work to get off that body fat. So what I would say is if you want to gain lean muscle, and you have been training for a while, be smart about it. Know what your maintenance calories is. So if your maintenance calories is 2,500 calories, then start in a slight surplus, right? So if you're at 2,500 calories, go to 2,700, right? And do that for 2 or 3 weeks. I always like for myself, I do natural bodybuilding, right? Nutrition is very important for me. And in the off season, our goal is to gain weight. But obviously for us, if we gain a bunch of fat, then it's going to be very hard at the end of the day for us to look good when it's finally time to compete. So the rule of thumb for me as a male is I try to gain about a quarter pound to half a pound per week. right? So maximum in a month, I gain 1 to 2 pounds. Okay, and that's a good rate for me. If I'm seeing that I'm getting stronger, because my training plan allows that, and I see that I'm gaining that 1 to 2 pounds a week, then I know I'm gaining good quality weight. But once we start going above that 1 to 2 pounds in the month, then we know we're gaining a little bit too much, and we're in a bit of a too much of a caloric surplus. So I would say start, 200 calories above your maintenance. Make sure you have a good amount of protein in there. Kind of exclude all the trans fat and saturated fat as much as you can, and you should be doing as well as you possibly can. I know for females this is a little scary because we don't like to see the weight go up. Males as well, but inevitably, if you've been training for a while and you want to gain some muscle, you have to gain a bit of weight. Females take it a little bit slower, right? So, like I said, if males gain about 0.25 to 0.5 pounds per week, females would be about half that, right? So if males can gain about 1 to 2 pounds in a month, females would be about half a pound to 1 pound in a month. Mainly being females store just physiologically because of reproductive issues, or not issues, but reproductive system. Females store more fat on their body, so you want to take that weight gain a little bit slower. So take it about half the rate that a male would.
Totally. That's good, Kyle. I think a lot of people try to go really ambitious and try to go for two goals at the same time of building muscle and losing fat. And like you said, it's possible at the beginning, but it's really helpful to start narrowing down one or the other as you get more into it, right? We got a few more questions coming in. Do you recommend eating a certain amount of meals per day or avoid snacking?
Sorry, what was the last part of that?
Do you recommend a certain amount of meals / do you avoid snacking?
It's totally personal preference for everyone. You might read this online where one expert, quote unquote, expert says eat 6 meals a day, right? And then the other guy says eat 3 meals and 2 small snacks a day. But this is what works for those guys, right? It doesn't work for everyone that way. At the end of the day, for 98% of people on the planet, when it comes to body composition, it just comes down to, like we said, that energy balance, whether you're eating less or eating more than you burn, and then having the right amount of protein, and then kind of tinkering with the carbs and fats to make it fit you. In terms of meals per day, I think it's just whatever fits you, right? So for me personally, I find like I eat 4 meals a day, and that keeps me feeling good throughout the day. I've had a client who did a natural physique competition, and I had him on 6 meals a day because it was what worked for him. It helped him not feel hungry, even though he was in a caloric deficit for a long period of time. Other people, they could eat 3 bigger meals in the day and a couple snacks, and that's what they feel great with, right? So meal totals doesn't really matter, just as long as you have the right calories and you have the right amount of protein, and then your carbs and your fats fit you as well as they can.
Awesome. Really good. How do you create an effective meal plan to increase muscle when you work out 5 to 6 times per week? It's kind of a big question.
Yeah. By effective, it has to be sustainable, right? So you could design the most perfect macronutrient, micronutrient ratio meal plan in the world, give it to your client or give it to yourself, and they hate it, right? And so then what's the possibility of them actually achieving results long term if they hate their food that they're eating, or if they hate their diet that they're having, right? So I think if you're looking for an efficient diet to build muscle over time, you need to find one that works for you, so it has foods in it that you like, that also matches your goals, matches at least the protein and the caloric intake that you want to have, right? The other two are a little bit, that's why I say it's more personalized, right? Fats and carbs are more personalized because you can play with them so that, if you're someone who likes to have, I don't know, fruit, or you're someone who likes to have, a certain snack in their diet, then that's fine, just as long as you keep it within the framework of what your plan is, right? So when I make a plan for clients, when you ask efficient plan, or the most effective plan, I should say, the most effective plan I can give to a client is the most personalized plan I can give to a client, right? Because the more they enjoy what they're consuming, the more likely they'll stick to it, and the more likely we'll see long-term success. The more they hate what I give them, right, or the more they dislike what I give them, they might stick to it for 3 or 4 weeks, and then they fall off the wagon, and then we're at ground zero again, right? So effectiveness goes hand in hand with sustainability.
Awesome, man. Really good. Another question here. Do you have anything to say about
your screen?
Oh, we're still here. Are you skipping? One of us is skipping here. Uh-oh.
Sorry, your screen froze on.
Are you back? All right, I can see you. Can you see me?
Oh, can you repeat that?
Yeah, man. So the question says, do you have anything to say about sleep?
I can hear you. I just can't see.
Do you have anything to say about sleep and how it relates to gaining weight or not getting?
One of us has a bad connection. I'm gonna walk over here, see if the connection is better. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it wouldn't be a Zoom call without some technical issues. Yeah. So one more time here. Do you have anything to say about sleep and how it relates to gaining weight or not getting results?
Yeah. So sleep is something that we didn't discuss, but it's incredibly important. Incredibly important. I can't stress that enough. Mainly because of sleep's effect on hormone levels, and we won't get too much into that. But quality sleep has a very profound effect on hormones, specifically things like cortisol. So if you're getting bad sleep, or if you're not giving yourself enough sleep, like say you're someone who likes to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then you get up at 8 o'clock to go to work or to go to school or whatever it might be, then it's going to affect your performance, and it's going to affect your hormone levels, which is going to affect your body composition goals, right? So sleep is very important, especially for weight loss. If you're not getting adequate sleep, it's going to have a big effect on your body's ability to lose weight, mainly because cortisol levels will be quite a bit higher, which is going to affect your ability to burn adipose tissue or fat. I like to go back to, I'll go back to myself on this one. Like, one of the main, like after food, the main factor I take into consideration, especially when I'm at times of the year, like back when I was in the university, I was playing sports. So I was playing basketball, or now when I'm competing and training to compete. After food, sleep is the second most critical thing. Even if you're someone who has a hard time sleeping, even if you give yourself enough time, like say you go to bed at 11 o'clock and you wake up at 8 o'clock, but you can't sleep, it's important that you do at least give yourself that time to attempt to sleep. Now, there's things that you can do to help you sleep. You know, you can go to a doctor and they can give you, certain medications or certain sleep aids that'll help you sleep. Some better than the other, obviously. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to recommend you take A or B or C when it comes to sleep. But yeah, very good question, because adequate sleep has a massive effect on hormones, which in turn have a massive effect on our metabolism and our body's ability to either gain weight or lose weight.
Awesome, man. Really good. Let's end it there. Thank you, Kyle, for your time. Thank you, everyone who came and watched. I hope you got something out of it. I'm trying to record this, so hopefully it worked and we can get you guys the whole video again after if you missed it or if you weren't able to be here, as well as I will send out the slides to you sometime this week as well. But from myself and OK Fitness, thank you for joining and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, Kyle.
See ya.